Focus with Farr, a discussion of national issues that matter to the Central Coast, with 20th District Congressman Sam Farr.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Focus with Farr. Animals, both domestic and wildlife, play a very important role in our lives, particularly in the Monterey Bay area. We have the responsibility to provide and care for their well-being. Few organizations have done more to look out for the welfare of animals than the Humane Society of the United States. I'm pleased to be joined today by Wayne Pacelle, CEO and President of the Humane Society of the United States. We know him here as the Great Wayne. Wayne has been the head of the Humane Society since 2004, and under his leadership, the Humane Society has been named Gold Star's #1 high-impact animal protection group, and by Worth magazine as the #1 of the most 10 fiscally responsible charities in the world. And while providing a voice for the voiceless and caring for all of the creatures, great and small, we want to thank him for coming today and for joining us in Focus with Farr. So, Wayne, what I like to do on these shows is give our audience a little background about yourself. I mean, that story of your life, and I know you worked on the Hill. You learned from the inside before you went to the outside, and you've really been unique in sort of this crossing that bridge and then using what is so often necessary here, that fiscal awareness to be responsible for money. Yours is donated money, but you also work a lot with taxpayer money in our agencies. So give us a little bit about how you evolved into the remarkable position and reputation that you have here on the Hill.
Well, Sam, that's very generous of you, and thanks for having me on. It's I've always had a real special connection to California and also to the Central Coast, and you have been a spectacular advocate for animal welfare during your entire career in the U.S. House, and then also when you were in the Assembly in the state of California, when you were doing work on puppy mills and a wide range of issues. So I'm excited to tell some of the folks who are watching about your record. But for me, this has been a lifelong passion in terms of my love and appreciation for animals. And I think most children...
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. My father was a football coach and a high school teacher.
At Yale?
No.
But you went to Yale, right?
I went to Yale, and I actually started an animal welfare group when I was a sophomore at Yale College. But even before that, I had this kind of stirring of a feeling that animals matter, that they have their own lives. You know, you look into their eyes and you see, you know, there's a being present. Yeah. You know, they're not just a bunch of, you know, creatures out there who are operating purely by instinct. They have feelings and they have emotions. I mean, anyone who has a dog or a cat or a horse knows that. But I think for a lot of our human history, we kind of put aside our responsibility to animals. We thought, well, they were here for certain uses when it was convenient for us as pets and we loved them, but then we got all these other animals out there that we're not really thinking about. And what I decided to do when I was a college student is I said, you know, we have a broader responsibility to animals, not just the ones we know in our home or in our community, but all animals, the elephants in Africa, the sea turtles who, you know, are swimming in the oceans, even the farm animals. And I actually got quite...
You know, there's, in art from generations, I go out to little first, second grade, kindergarten sometimes and talk about lawmaking. I usually about rules. And so if you could make a law, it would be about every child.
Yeah.
All they want to do is make laws to protect animals.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book called The Bond, Our Kinship with Animals, Our Call to Defend Them. And my thesis in the book is that we have an instinctive connection to animals. We humans came out of nature, right? I mean, for 99% of human history, we were hunters and gatherers. We were immersed in nature. We had connections to animals. If you study surviving tribal societies in the Amazon or in New Guinea, the people know all of the animals.
Yep.
They depend on them. Yes, they kill some of them for food, but it's for survival. But our history is tied in with animals. And I think of a congressional district like yours with the beauty of the mountains and the beauty of the ocean. I mean, nature, you can monetize that. I mean,
we do.
We
call it watchable wildlife. And we sell scenery and watchable wildlife, and that's our biggest economic engine, even bigger in agriculture it's the attraction to the beauty of the area, and then when you're there, it's the interpretation. What is it? You're not only seeing, you know, different kinds of trees like redwood trees that are not prominent everywhere, cypress trees, Monterey pine trees. I mean, there are a lot of just the flora, and then and the fauna. You get into all the sea life. We're making more monies watching whales than they ever made killing whales.
You can harpoon a whale once. You can watch a whale 1,000 times. The market for harpooning is a tiny, tiny sliver of the globe. How many people want to watch whales? Almost everybody. I mean, you have to be a disconnected human being not to be fascinated by creatures who are 50 feet long and weigh 50 tons.
Well, you've done such a remarkable job, and I think a lot of the humane societies have done that. Tell us a little bit about how you were able to sort of consolidate, prioritize, and then sort of get into the political process of, because you know you just can't sell things on emotions anymore.
Yeah.
It's got to be responsibly managed. It's got to be money that's tight to get at.
Yeah. Well, you know, for me, it was a passion for animals. I'm not a professional manager, and I just happened to land at the Humane Society. I had a love for animals. I wanted to do something about it. It's a social reform movement, and I wanted to be involved in driving change. And I joined the Humane Society of the United States because I felt it had a mainstream reputation. It was also about protecting all animals. And I have felt in working to grow the organization, you know, we now have millions of supporters all over the United States. We're now operating with our international arm, Humane Society International, in 56 countries. We actually just brought a bunch of dogs back from South Korea. We rescued them from dog meat farms. And Sam, I mean,
dog meat farms?
Yes, people.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
heard of puppy mills, but not dog meat.
It's the equivalent of puppy mills, but it's in South Korea, and it's shocking. You know, we have 10,000 puppy mills in the United States.
Still?
Still. There's 17,000 dog meat farms in South Korea. So we are working to turn it around. In fact, we're trying to convert these dog meat farmers into other businesses. We're getting them into blueberry farming. We're getting them into cranberry farming. We're getting them into other forms of agriculture, and most of them don't want to be in this dog meat farm. Even they're raising dogs like people raise cattle and pigs, and they're slaughtering them for meat. And the young people in South Korea don't want to eat this meat. It's a vestigial practice with the older generations, but it's changing. But I only mention that because we're a global enterprise at this point, and there's so many issues. But about the Humane Society, I joined because of its all-animal focus, and I wanted to create a big movement. And I felt that we can't rescue our way out of problems. You know, in the recent floods that have occurred in South Carolina, our people are down there rescuing animals. We raid puppy mills, we raid dog fights, we raid cockfights. But if we did only that, we'd be failing. What we also need are standards in society, which is why we work with you and other leaders on animal welfare here in the Congress, also in the state legislature. In 2015, we passed about a dozen bills in the state legislature where you used to serve to help animals, including a very comprehensive ban on the commercial trade in ivory and rhino horn.
And the governor just signed that bill in California.
He signed that bill.
I had no idea. I just went to Africa for the first time, to Tanzania, and went on a 3-day safari.
It's like what you're talking about in Monterey County with the ecotourism. It's the same thing.
But I had no idea how the incredible slaughter of elephants and rhinos.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds a day.
Yeah.
A day.
I know. It's shocking. These are remarkable animals. These elephants are so intelligent. They live in these family groups where the grandmothers and the mothers and the grandkids are all together.
And all for a piece of ivory that maybe can get $2,000 for a trunk. So you're doing lots of like spraying these trunks now and doing kinds of things that don't injure the animal, but take the value out of the...
But think about the economics of this, Sam. It's just like you talked about whale watching off of the central coast of California. I mean, that's a business. People make money by protecting whales and providing an experience, an opportunity for people to see them. The greatest resource that Africa has is its elephants and its rhinos and its lions. So these poachers and others who liquidate them are not only killing animals, they're robbing the people of Africa of these economic opportunities. It's not just about animals, and this is one great...
But I think what you're in, and I appreciate because of your knowledge about how to work politics, is that to really translate the economic value of animals protection, animal welfare, that it's not taking away somebody's livelihood. It's really creating more opportunities. And we see what we've done in the Monterey Bay area, which, you know, we were hunter and gatherers when we first started. That's where the Spaniards landed.
Yes.
And but for the Indians providing them food, they would have all starved to death.
Right.
And so they had to live off the land for years.
Yes.
And we've always been doing that in California. Now we've reversed that in the political world. I mean, saving condors in Big Sur is now generating expensive rooms in the expensive hotels in Big Sur. Saving the sea otters has got people buying all kinds of mugs and binoculars and all kinds of things, and going to the aquarium in Monterey. Saving the whales has now got the former fishermen taking people out on boatloads to watch them rather than to just load up the boat with fish.
No one understands this as well as you do in Congress, because you have just articulated why I think it's so crucial for us to help animals. It's good for them and it's good for us. And the beauty of nature and the presence of animals is a potential economic engine. I mean, your Monterey Bay Aquarium is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a new book coming out in the spring. I wrote about it because they have so many species who are native to the Monterey
To the
Bay.
bay. They're all native.
Yeah,
They rarely bring in anything from the other. Most aquariums have, you know, collections all over the world.
And they have, so they rescue sea otters, and then they put them back, and then they also have sustainable seafood lessons for people, because, you know, it's not just about that one experience when the animal's in front of you. It's like, how do we live our lives to reflect a sensibility about animals? And what we consume in terms of the fish products matters. You know, there's a huge amount of collateral damage from some of the fishing practices, right? I mean, there are more sustainable fishing practices, and then there are reckless fishing practices.
These drift nets and the hook nets and all those things.
Killing
Yeah,
of these seabirds, you know, they get tangled up in long lines sometimes.
So was it hard for you to sort of professionalize a nonprofit into really being so smart about how you ran your organization, and with that you were able to get a lot more funding? I mean, you're now one of the bigger nonprofits in the United States.
Yeah, we're one of the 100 biggest charities in the U.S., and I think that people were ready for the leadership I tried to deliver, because so many people care about animals. They want to do something about it, but they want to kind of learn the most effective way to address the problem. And our way of working in Congress with you and, you know, your old buddy George Miller, who retired, and Nancy Pelosi, and working on the other side of the aisle, Jeff Denham has been a strong animal advocate on the Republican side, Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein. I mean, these are all big leaders on animal welfare, and California has shown the way. But we also work with the biggest corporations in the U.S. I mean, I work with Walmart. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we just
telling us what you did with Walmart and just recently with McDonald's.
You know, McDonald's is a huge name in food sales, of course. You know, everybody knows that one of the iconic brands. McDonald's sells 2 billion eggs. Now, a number of years ago—
2 billion eggs? 2
billion eggs a year. 2 billion eggs. 4% of all eggs sold in the United States come from McDonald's, or come through McDonald's. And we got them to agree to procure eggs only from cage-free operations, where the hens are not in some little wire cage where they're all huddled together and they can't move for 18 months of their life, where they can actually move around some. It's not nirvana, it's not utopia, but it's a heck of a lot better than living your life in a cage.
That was one of my first bills in the California legislature, to require all the research institutions that were publicly funded to have minimum cage standards, essentially a building code for cages for any kind of animal in captivity.
Well, you know, you were also very active on puppy mill issues.
Oh, that was a wonderful start in that. And we had some success in California, and then came back here and worked with you, getting some success nationally. But we still have a problem, don't we?
Yeah, we do, but we've made a lot of progress. And, you know, this notion that people are going to raise these dogs, the breeding females, in a cage, not let them out, sell the puppies to a pet store, and then the consumer who's, you know, shopping in a retail space doesn't realize where the animal comes from. If they could only see, if we could kind of unwind this and direct them to the place, they'd be appalled at the conditions that these animals live. And at the same time, of course, our shelters, you know, Humane Societies, SPCAs, Monterey County has a wonderful SPCA. they're struggling to adopt out homeless animals. So at the very time when we're trying to get people to adopt these animals to save their lives, we're flooding our communities with these puppy mill dogs, where the mothers are treated so inhumanely.
And it carries over in congenital diseases and lack of sort of the normal shots that animals get. Yeah, it was appalling. And in fact, we didn't even think we had them in California. So most of our law was directed for the import by requiring full disclosure. If you're going to, it's sort of a warranty.
Yes.
Give us the background. Where did this dog get manufactured? Where did it get raised?
Yes.
What kind of shots did you give it? Were its parents' names, or you know, that kind of. You couldn't do that in a puppy mill, so it sort of banned them, and we immediately saw Petland and others just take their puppies out of the windows.
Yeah.
So it had an effect, but then that was only in California for a short time until people realized they could buy them over the internet and do all kinds of things.
And that's when we worked on with you to get the U.S. Department of Agriculture to close a loophole in the Animal Welfare Act, because the USDA has an animal care inspections program. So they go to the puppy mills to make sure that at least there are some minimum standards. But legally, they were only going to the puppy mills that were selling to pet stores. In this era of e-commerce, many of these puppy mills just started to sell their dogs directly online.
Yeah.
They were excluded, and you helped us close that loophole, which was a wonderful thing, and I want to thank you so much.
Well, I also appreciate all the help you've given me in being able to get more money for the inspection, the veterinarians that work for the government in the USDA, whose responsibility in law is to go out and check everything where you have it. I'm performing animals in shows, you know, the things you're talking about, transporting animals across lines. I mean, we still have a lot of issues with that. And we regulate, as you know, we regulate the transportation of chickens, translation of pigs and horses and cows. We still don't ever have any regulation on transportation of horses. Well, they're considered like a dog. They're a family pet.
I know. Well, this is why you're, you know, I'm sure some of your constituents know this, but for animal welfare advocates who are in the Congress, it's important that they serve on the right committees. There are certain committees that really are funnels for a lot of the animal welfare related issues. And a lot of the lawmakers who are really passionate about animals come from cities and they're not connected to agriculture. Yeah. The fact that you have a district that's got a lot of agriculture and you've got a lot of animal-friendly people, you have worked on the Agriculture Spending Committee and you're the top Democrat on the committee. You're in the room when they decide these issues, and you're the biggest voice for animals in one of the most important political processes that plays out for animal welfare. Getting more funding for inspections and enforcement of our laws, the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act to see that animals who are slaughtered are not tormented and tortured during that process, and dealing with the issue of horse slaughter. I mean, California voters banned horse slaughter in 1998, but American horses are still being shipped to Mexico, they're still being shipped to Canada, and there have been efforts to try to legalize horse slaughter in the United States, in Missouri and New Mexico, and you stopped that with an amendment. And this year, it's still in play, so we're going to have to
the show's not over yet.
No, we've got it in the Senate language, but not in the House, but we've got to get it done.
Remind my voters and constituents what you did in California with the initiatives you've done. I mean, they were very controversial, and I think people were just shocked and surprised at how effective you were politically to get them passed, because they were big money spent against them. But not only passing them there, setting a standard for the nation. As California goes, so goes the nation. And I'm thinking particularly of what you've done in the chicken industry.
Well, we did a ballot measure that at the time, as you say, was viewed as, oh my God, these people are reaching too far. It was a ballot measure that I thought was elementally simple in terms of its components. Animals are raised for food in this country, and certain animals are raised in intensive confinement. And the most extreme are the confinement of veal calves in a 22-inch wide crate so they can't move. They can't move so their muscles don't develop, and that means their meat is tender. They're kept in a state of anemia to keep their flesh pale white. Also the breeding sows in the pig industry, the sows are alive for 3 or 4 years, and they're put in a crate that's 2 feet wide. These are 300 or 400 or 500-pound animals, and all they can do for 3 or 4 years is take one step forward, one step back. I mean, if you could devise something that was a torture chamber, I mean, that would be it, where you immobilize an animal for their entire life. And the third element was these laying hens, which I mentioned. You know, chickens lay eggs, but the way that we've done it in a lot of these industrial facilities is we have a small cage like the size of a bread box, and we put 6 or 8 birds in that bread box, and we stack them up 8 high. And I went to one facility in Iowa that had 10 million birds at this
Can't even
complex.
imagine 10 million birds in under one roof.
Well, there were a few barns, but they were all clustered, and there are 3 million people in Iowa, Sam. At this one farm, there were 3 times as many chickens as there were people in Iowa's 99 counties. So anyway, the measure basically said that these animals, the veal calves, the breeding sows, the laying hens, should be able to lie down, stand up, turn around, and freely extend their limbs. I mean, not exactly a radical animal rights manifesto. And the ag community, you know, a lot of them were out of state, came in and fought it. They spent about $10 million. And in 2008, we got more votes for that citizen initiative, protect those farm animals, than any citizen initiative in California history. And I think it was a signal to a lot of elected officials who had not been as alert and aware and instinctively sympathetic as you have been, that wow, there are a lot of these animal people out there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who care. They're Democrats, they're independents, they're Republicans. And I think it was a switch. And since that time, in the state of California, we've passed more than 50 new laws to protect animals. California's absolutely established itself as the #1.
And it's the biggest ag state.
It's the biggest ag state.
So it's probably the biggest of everything. Probably have more dogs, more cats, more horses, more than anybody.
And you've got a lot of parks, you've got a lot of wildlife. I mean, we actually banned some inhumane hunting practices. We worked with you and the Congress on this, but we passed a ballot measure in California to stop the use of steel-jawed leg-hole traps.
I'm glad I started that when the first bill, that was one of the most few, we really caught everybody by surprise. We ended that an amendment on the floor.
Yeah.
It passed overwhelmingly, got into the Senate, and all hell broke loose. Yeah. I had no idea how many groups in this country trap animals with steel-jawed traps, because when they found out that we were going to take them away, they came here in droves, and it was a lot of rural America who were trapping, some of them paid to be trappers, but many of them just as hobbyists to trap animals.
I think they all rally because I think they've got this mentality of, like on gun control, that if you do one thing, you're going to ban everything. Which we weren't trying to ban everything. We were trying to stop the most cruel traps. So I think a lot of other people swung in. But when we put it in front of the people of California, they overwhelmingly approved the ban on steel-jaw traps and other body gripping traps, and banning poisons that the federal government uses to control predators in the West. So we did that. We banned the trophy hunting of mountain lions in the state with our friend Bill Yates. We worked on that issue, and the chicken cages and the pig confinement facilities. But we've got a lot more work to do, and we want to get people involved. And it's important that we have allies like you in the Congress. I mean, you guys are our voice.
You've seen the ebb and flow of Congress. I mean, it gets very, say, pro-environment, animal rights, and then it, something else, crisis goes on in the world, a lot of foreign policy issues, gun issues. Mm-hmm. Where do you see it now? Where are we how responsive is this Congress to the concerns of the Humane Society of the United States?
Challenging, Sam. I mean, the culture is definitely moving in our direction. These ideas are ascendant. You see it with films like Blackfish, which expose the mistreatment of orcas at SeaWorld, and other documentaries, and lawmaking at the state level, ballot initiative success, Walmart, Procter & Gamble, McDonald's making new declarations. I mean, there's so many indicators. But with the Republicans in charge in the House, I think the Republicans are aligned very closely with the Farm Bureau and the NRA. And they don't like to see the Humane Society progress on any issue, even if it's an issue that doesn't really affect the rank and file of their membership. So they, in a classic sort of Washington way, they just try to block things from happening. We've got a lot of support on horse slaughter, on ending horse soring, which is the abuse of these Tennessee walking horses. We're trying to ban, finally, the use of animals in cosmetic testing. The European Union has banned it. India has banned any testing of animals for cosmetics. We've got hundreds of companies now that don't test. We've got a bill to get that done here in Congress. So if it were just the Democrats, we'd win 98-2 in terms of percentages. We've got a lot of Republican support, but you still have these obstructionists.
Well, I think you're very smart, though, in working with industry, because they know where the consumers, as you said, the American public, sort of the people on the street.
Yeah.
Election gets to be much more than just one issue.
Yeah.
But as a consumer of the products of Walmart or
Yeah.
McDonald's that you just talked about, if those companies realize what the benefit that comes out of just
Yeah.
changing a policy, that policy is huge because of the amount of money they spend. I mean, that changes chicken farming in the United States.
Without any question. And now the egg industry realizes that its future is cage-free. When McDonald's and Starbucks and all these companies that buy huge numbers of eggs say we don't want it, because these companies are paying attention to their consumers, and they're also going to get a halo effect. People are going to say, listen, this is a company that's responsible. That's the sort of product that I want to consume. It's the company I want to patronize. And, you know, for companies to say, okay, the heck with the values. I mean, who cares? Let's just make money. That's not our country. I mean, business has always been about making money, but it's also been honoring American values. And opposition to animal cruelty is a core value in our society. And that's why we have pets in 2/3 of American households. It's why we have wildlife watching excursions. It's why you have so many amazing things in the 20th Congressional District. People love nature. They love animals. People who hurt animals, they should be hiding in the shadows, because those are not popular people in our society.
Well, I want to just thank you for your incredible leadership since I've been in Congress, and watching you ascend to your position, President and CEO, is you really made this U.S. Humane Society a remarkable entity and respected here in Washington. And I really think it's to your individual leadership and appeal, and also understanding politics and how things are done on the Hill. So,
well, you've been a huge ally, Sam. I wish we could have 434 more of you. We'd be a much better country for animals, that's for sure.
Well, if I keep eating the way I am, maybe I'll divide like an amoeba and you'll have a lot more of us. But thank you for coming on the show.
You.
Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Focus with Farr, and we try to bring issues that are of interest to the Central Coast. I hope you've enjoyed the program. Let us know.
Learn more about Sam Farr's work in Congress, or share your views at farr.house.gov, or follow him on Facebook or Twitter.